Breaking news this hour out of Melbourne, where Harry and Meghan have touched down, kickstarting their 4-day visit to Australia.
Prince Harry, once the epitome of royal charisma, stood frozen on stage in Melbourne, staring at a haunting reality. Only 42 people filled the seats in a venue meant for hundreds. The ticket prices had been slashed. The ads ran for weeks, but the demand simply wasn't there. What happened to the prince who was once the world's most captivating figure? A crushing blow to his public image.
There is a lot of anger in Australia over this week's visit by Prince Harry and Meghan. They are promoting their favorite causes and talking about life in California.
This moment marked the unraveling of a brand that once commanded millions. How did it all collapse so fast? So, what do you think? Was it just a bad marketing campaign? Or has Harry's royal appeal truly faded? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the truth behind major stories, please subscribe. Harry's heartbreaking realization. The moments before Harry's event in Melbourne left those who witnessed it with an unforgettable image. For what seemed like an eternity, he stood frozen, staring blankly at the iPad screen in his hands. His face, drained of all color, was a stark contrast to the energy expected at such an event. He stood there, motionless for 5 minutes, his mind clearly racing as he absorbed the unsettling sight in front of him. The list of unsold tickets that grew more ominous with each passing second. In a low, almost inaudible voice, Harry spoke to his assistant, his words soaked with disbelief. "I was told the demand was there. Where is everyone?" Those few words captured the crushing reality of the situation. His expectations, shaped by weeks of aggressive promotion, a flood of advertisements, and even a sharp price drop, were crumbling before him. Despite the high hopes and relentless efforts to fill the venue, the seats remained empty, the tickets unsold. The scene wasn't just about the empty seats. It was the $50,000 fee that really hit home. While still a decent amount, it was far below what was expected. This should have been a moment of triumph, a celebration of his success and influence. Instead, that $50,000 fee felt like a painful reminder of how much his value had dropped. Harry, once in such high demand, now faced a different reality. His name, once synonymous with power and prestige, had become a symbol of decline, a weight that was far heavier than any financial figure could express. It was a stark reflection of his fading relevance. The shock in the air was undeniable. No one could have predicted this outcome, especially after so much had been invested in the event. The empty seats were more than just a letdown. They symbolized a deeper problem. Harry's once strong connection with his audience seemed to have faded. His ability to captivate and inspire had diminished. Weeks of careful planning, thousands of dollars spent, and yet the response was chillingly indifferent. It was a painful realization. What was meant to be a triumphant moment now felt like a symbol of his fading relevance. As the reality set in, Harry was left to face the truth. Despite the marketing blitz, despite everything that had been done to ensure success, demand simply wasn't there. His market value had dived, and no amount of past glory could change that painful truth. The venue Harry expected to be filled with a crowd only had a few people in attendance. But what was the figure he encountered that left him both surprised and disappointed? Would this number motivate him to deliver the speech he had carefully prepared? And what does this reveal about what Harry has become? Let's uncover the details. Heartbreaking descent from royal icon. Harry, once celebrated as a leading global speaker and a passionate advocate for mental health, now found himself dealing with a crushing blow to his career. The venue, which was meant to be filled with eager paying attendees, stood nearly empty, with only 42 people in attendance. Even more disheartening, most of those who did show up had only come because they had received free passes. This stark reality revealed that the demand for his presence was far from what had been promised, leaving Harry to face the uncomfortable truth that his influence had faded. The scene was nothing short of shocking. All the years Harry had spent building his image, with royal ties and a powerful voice for change, seemed to crumble in an instant. It wasn't just a poor turnout. It was a glaring, painful reminder of how far he had fallen. The empty seats were louder than the speech he had prepared, each one echoing the harsh truth. His once glamorous reputation as a royal figure, admired and capable of drawing crowds, now seemed like a distant memory. What was once a symbol of influence and power now felt lost, leaving Harry to face the reality of his public decline. As Harry stood before the sparse crowd, trying to deliver his lecture on personal trauma, his words sounded more like a desperate plea than the motivational speech he had hoped for. The energy of the event shifted from advocacy to an overwhelming sense of urgency and desperation. The audience, visibly uninterested, grew more disengaged with every word he spoke. His once strong connection to the global elite, who had admired him for years, seemed to slip further away. What should have been a powerful moment of insight instead revealed a painful reality. Harry was losing the audience, and with it, his former relevance. What should have been a moment of healing and insight for his audience became a symbol of his unraveling status. His lecture, once a potential rallying cry for mental health awareness, now felt like a hollow performance, a desperate attempt to cling to relevance in a world that had already moved on. The glamour of royal allure had faded, leaving only the stark truth. Harry's reputation, once untouchable, was now in freefall. Harry was met with only a small number of attendees at the venue where he intended to deliver his lecture. But what could have caused such a low turnout? Did the organizers fail in their publicity efforts, or was the ticket price too outrageous? Now, let's unravel how Harry's fading royal appeal led to a financial disaster. The fatal pricing mistake. The downfall of Harry's event didn't begin in Melbourne. It started long before, behind the scenes. Internal documents showed that the event organizers made a risky assumption. They believed Harry's royal status alone would be enough to justify sky-high ticket prices. They set each ticket at a staggering $2,400, betting that his connection to the royal family would fill the venue. It was a huge gamble on his image, hoping that people would be willing to pay top dollar just to see him speak. Unfortunately, their plan backfired, as the reality of the situation became painfully clear. When ticket sales fell far short of expectations, the harsh reality of their mistake became impossible to ignore. Panic set in as the situation unraveled. Despite drastic efforts to turn things around, including slashing prices by an eye-watering 70%, the sales refused to budge. The venue remained mostly empty, and the organizers were left to confront a painful truth. Their financial strategy had been deeply flawed from the start. No amount of discounts could hide the core issue. Harry's once powerful appeal had faded, and the event's failure made it clear that the interest in him had diminished significantly. Once adored for his royal status, the prince now found his image lacking the magnetic pull it once had. For years, Harry's value was tied to his title, but now it seemed like that very title had become more of a burden than an asset. What was supposed to be an inspiring event showcasing his work for change instead revealed the cracks in his carefully crafted persona. The royal label that once set him apart and made him highly sought after now seemed insufficient to ensure success. What had once made him a global figure now left him vulnerable, and the public no longer viewed him with the same awe. The cracks were undeniable. What was once a golden ticket to fame and fortune had now turned into a cautionary tale of how quickly fame can fade. The truth was undeniable. Harry's royal appeal had eroded, and with it, the financial promises built on that image crumbled too. The dream of a sold-out event, fueled by his association with the royal family, had collapsed under the weight of changing public perceptions, leaving the organizers scrambling to pick up the pieces. Necessary preparations were made before Harry's lecture, and the entry fee was also adjusted, yet the venue remained scanty. But what does this mean for Harry? Is this the peak of humiliation for him, or is an even more devastating blow still awaiting? Let's find out. From luxury to ruin. Things took a sharp turn when a surprising legal document arrived, a force majeure notification. This wasn't just a formal letter, It was a game changer. Issued by Archewell's Peak Performance Group, it was the spark that ignited a huge financial crisis. The event organizers, already struggling under pressure, were left with no choice but to pull the plug on the show. They had hoped to meet their revenue targets, but the reality was clear. They couldn't. The cancellation wasn't just about a failed event. It was the moment the harsh truth hit. Despite all the planning and effort, they had failed to deliver the numbers they had promised. For Harry, the downfall was quick and harsh. Just hours earlier, he had been relaxing in the comfort of a luxurious presidential suite, savoring the perks of his royal status. But all of that changed in an instant when the financial crisis struck. In the blink of an eye, he was relocated to a basic, no-frills hotel room, a far cry from the extravagance he once knew. It wasn't just the downgrade in his accommodation that stung. His reputation, once shining brightly, was now in ruins. And with it, his financial security took a steep plunge, leaving him grappling with the harsh reality of his shattered image and crumbling wealth. The full impact of the legal and financial fallout hit Harry like a crushing wave. The fee he had once negotiated as a significant payout now seemed small in comparison to the enormous losses he was facing. What had once been seen as a fair reward for his time and effort had become little more than a lifeline, a small financial fix to salvage whatever remained of the event. The grand payday he had once dreamed of now felt like a distant fantasy. Instead, he was left scrambling to limit the damage and regain some control over a situation that had completely spiraled out of his hands. What should have been a successful venture now felt like a desperate recovery effort. As the cold reality of the situation hit home, Harry was left grappling with the fallout. A career that once seemed untouchable now facing serious questions, and a future that looked uncertain. What was once a glamorous endeavor had quickly turned into a cautionary tale of how quickly everything can change. As if the low turnout wasn't enough, Harry received the news of the event's cancellation. But could he have anticipated this when he first arrived in Australia? How was he received upon arrival? Could this humiliation have been avoided? Let's find out. From royal welcome to humiliating collapse, Harry's visit to Melbourne initially painted a picture of success. The royal couple was warmly welcomed by large crowds at the Royal Children's Hospital, where the atmosphere was lively with laughter and smiles.
Harry and Meghan have drawn cheers and applause, winning hearts as they began their whirlwind Australian visit right here in Melbourne.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex kicked off their four-day tour at the Royal Children's Hospital.
As they strolled hand in hand along the picturesque Yarra River, their presence seemed to spark genuine joy and admiration from the public. Meghan and Harry appeared in their element, radiating warmth and confidence, embraced by a crowd that saw them as symbols of grace and hope. The excitement around them was palpable, creating the kind of atmosphere reserved for royal visits, full of high expectations and anticipation. In those moments, it felt like everything was exactly as it should be. The crowds were genuinely excited, and Harry seemed to soak in their admiration, making it easy to believe their star power was still as strong as ever. The couple appeared to be the picture-perfect royals, surrounded by the warmth and affection of the public. It was a fleeting moment where it seemed like their popularity was untouched by the struggles they'd been facing. The smiles, the cheers, and the connection with the people gave the illusion that they still held the influence they once had, even if just for a moment. What seemed like a joyful and promising start quickly gave way to a much harsher reality. The warmth and excitement they felt during those early moments soon faded into distant memories. Just hours later, the royal couple was confronted with an entirely different scene. A nearly empty hall in Melbourne with rows of unsold tickets and a marketing campaign that had completely failed. The enthusiastic reception they received earlier that day now felt like a cruel contrast to the cold emptiness before them. The optimism they had felt during their public appearances now seemed naive, as they were faced with the painful truth of their faltering appeal and fading influence. the devastating emptiness of the hall stood in stark contrast to the vibrant crowds that had greeted them earlier. It was a painful reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. What had started as a day of royal charm and public affection ended in a marketing disaster, shattering the illusion that their popularity was as unshakable as they had once believed. Harry and Meghan, who were both warmly welcomed when they initially arrived in Australia, are now facing rejection in the same place they were once cheered. But how was their reception when they first visited a few years ago? And what could have changed to make people desert them now? Let's dive into the dramatic shift in Harry and Meghan's public perception. A shift in public perception. When Harry and Meghan visited Australia in 2018, they were still beloved members of the royal family, enjoying widespread support as they toured the country for 9 days. During that trip, they were met by tens of thousands of loyal fans at each stop, their every move covered by the media. The excitement and energy in the air were undeniable, as the crowds eagerly gathered to see the royal couple. At that time, their presence was a powerful symbol of the British monarchy's influence, both in the UK and around the world. They were seen as royal figures who could draw huge crowds and captivate public attention, a true reflection of the monarchy's global reach and strength. Fast forward to their 2026 visit, and the situation has changed drastically. The public's response in Australia this time around was a far cry from the enthusiasm they had received during their earlier tour. Most Australians interviewed by the BBC expressed either indifference or complete unawareness of the couple's visit. The couple, once adored by millions, now seemed to evoke little more than a passing glance from the public. The contrast between their 2018 welcome and the 2026 reception highlighted a significant shift in how they were perceived. The shift in public sentiment didn't stop with low attendance. A massive backlash erupted when it was revealed that Australian taxpayers might have to cover part of the security costs for Harry and Meghan's public appearances. This shocking revelation made people question the true price of their royal status and how much the public was really interested in their visit. The idea that taxpayers were paying for security for a couple no longer part of the royal family added fuel to the already growing fire of public frustration. It was a clear sign that many felt their presence in Australia was no longer a royal privilege, but an unwelcome burden. Giselle Baston, an associate professor at Flinders University, summed up the situation perfectly. If they think it's gone well, it's because nothing has gone wrong. Her words encapsulated the growing skepticism surrounding Harry and Meghan's royal brand. Once celebrated as figures of admiration, they were now being seen by many as irrelevant and expensive relics of a bygone era. In a world that has shifted dramatically in the past few years, the couple's royal status seems to have lost its power, leaving them as symbols of a monarchy that no longer commands the influence it once did. Beyond Harry losing relevance in the public eye, can his brand remain relevant at a time when people don't want to get close to him? Or will his brand suffer the same fate as his personality? Now, let's explore how Harry's stagnant brand led to a crisis in market value. The fall of a visionary. By 2023, the cracks in Harry's carefully curated brand were becoming impossible to ignore. What had once been a powerful and captivating story, the prince's departure from the UK and his shift to champion mental health, was beginning to feel worn out and overplayed. His message, which had initially resonated with so many, now lacked the fresh appeal it once had. The corporate world, which had eagerly paid millions for his appearances just a few years earlier, was now growing disillusioned. They found his content repetitive and uninspired, no longer offering the breakthrough ideas they had hoped for when they signed him. Behind the scenes, the feedback was harsh and unforgiving. Corporate clients, who had once viewed him as a game changer, a true leader who could inspire and drive change, were now disappointed. One recurring criticism, shared quietly behind closed doors, was blunt yet telling. "We paid for a visionary, but we got a therapy session." What was meant to be a series of motivational talks filled with fresh ideas and groundbreaking concepts had slowly turned into a personal reflection of his struggles. While his journey was genuine and heartfelt, it lacked the innovation and inspiration people had expected, leaving them feeling unsatisfied and yearning for more. As Harry's content became repetitive, his market value started to decline. The demand for his appearances faded as companies looked for fresh voices and new ideas, speakers who could truly inspire and make a difference. Rather than adapting to the evolving needs of his audience, Harry found himself caught in a cycle of old themes and personal reflection. His once impactful message now seemed stale, and the excitement that once surrounded him dwindled. In a world that craves innovation, Harry's failure to evolve left him struggling to stay relevant. His brand, once a symbol of transformation and hope, was now spiraling into what could only be described as a phase of disruption. It wasn't just that the market had moved on, it was that Harry had failed to evolve with it. His message, once powerful, now felt like a relic of the past, and his place at the top of the speaking circuit was increasingly uncertain. The narrative that had once set him apart was no longer enough to maintain his value. Harry, it seemed, was at a crossroads, and the future of his brand was hanging in the balance. Harry's brand had been suffering setbacks since 2023 before facing humiliation in Melbourne. But why did he continue with the Australian tour when his brand was struggling? Or did he plan to use the tour to breathe new life into his struggling brand? Let's find out. The silent struggles. The financial troubles at Archewell were already well underway before Harry's ill-fated Melbourne tour. As the organization's cash reserves began to run low, it became clear that they were facing a serious crisis. In a last-ditch effort to stay afloat, Archewell made the risky decision to push forward with Harry's Australian tour. But as the financial strain worsened, it became apparent that the organization no longer had the resources to support him the way it once had. What was meant to be a powerful, impactful series of events was instead turning into a financial burden. As security costs piled up and the event barely covered basic expenses, Harry's situation grew more unstable by the day. The lavish lifestyle he once enjoyed, funded by royal connections and high-paying public appearances, was now unsustainable. What was supposed to be a profitable and successful tour had turned into a financial nightmare. Harry found himself grappling with the harsh reality. He was now bearing the weight of a lifestyle his work could no longer support. The dream of grandeur had quickly morphed into a costly burden he could hardly afford to carry. Internal memos from Archewell expose a strategic yet ultimately flawed decision to save the situation. The once passionate mission that had fueled the organization seemed to have faded. Instead of staying true to the cause Harry had initially championed, the focus shifted to finding a quick financial solution. With mounting instability, the decision to press on with the Australian tour wasn't born from excitement or belief in the mission. Rather, it was a desperate move, driven by necessity to secure funds rather than any real commitment to the purpose they had originally set out to achieve. As the costs mounted and the audience's interest dwindled, it became apparent that the prince and his team were facing the consequences of ignoring the changing financial landscape. What had once seemed like an opportunity for growth and awareness now felt like a desperate attempt to make up for financial shortfalls, and the reality was sinking in. Harry was paying a heavy price for both his lifestyle and the organization's misguided choices. This wasn't about spreading a meaningful message anymore. It was about keeping the wheels turning, no matter the cost. The success of the Australian tour could have elevated Harry's brand. However, its flop also had a significant impact on it. But will his wife come to his aid during this trying time? Or will she protect her own image to ensure the same fate doesn't befall her? Now let's dive into a prince's isolation and strategic separation. The final collapse. As Harry grappled with the collapse of his public image and dwindling market value, it became increasingly clear that Meghan was handling the situation very differently. While he endured the humiliation of a sparsely attended event in Melbourne, Meghan was in Sydney, hosting a high-profile gathering that only enhanced her brand. She skillfully steered clear of the disastrous outcome of Harry's tour, ensuring that her reputation remained intact and her influence unscathed. It was a stark contrast, and it only added to the sense that a rift was growing between them, one that went beyond the public eye. Meghan, ever strategic, knew how to keep her image separate from Harry's struggles, maintaining her place in the spotlight while he faltered. This widening divide between Harry and Meghan pointed to something deeper, an unraveling that had been building for some time. With little public support and even less financial backing, Harry's future in the speaking world was now in serious jeopardy. Once seen as an influential voice, he was now faced with the harsh reality of his faltering career. In the solitude of a quiet hotel bar, far from the public eye, Harry sat alone, disconnected from his wife and the world he had once been a part of. The weight of being a fallen royal hit him hard. He was no longer part of an institution that had once offered him the world. The monarchy, which had been his foundation, now felt like a distant memory, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. The unfolding drama during Harry's Australian tour reveals a stark reality. His financial downfall mirrors his fading relevance on the global stage. Once seen as a powerful symbol of influence, Harry now finds himself fighting to regain his standing in a world that seems to have forgotten his value. The bright spotlight that once shone on him is now fading, leaving Harry grappling with an uncertain future. As his public image crumbles, one crucial question arises: where does a prince go when the world no longer recognizes his worth, and what happens when his influence is lost? Harry's fall from grace went beyond just the empty seats at his event. It marked a deeper, more painful awakening. The world that once adored him, a world where he stood as a symbol of influence, was now slipping through his fingers. The once clear path ahead was now shrouded in uncertainty, leaving him questioning his future. The future of this fallen royal seemed increasingly unclear, his place in the world uncertain as his once untouchable image faded into doubt. So, what do you think of Harry's humiliating experience in Melbourne? How can he regain respect and rebuild his reputation? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.